بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming. It's my pleasure to welcome you for the second day of our International Congress of the WPA, thematic Congress. And I hope that you have enjoyed yesterday very interesting and inspiring presentations. I'm Mufid Raouf. I'm a psychiatrist, and I was privileged to be the master of the ceremony, and I will chair the first session, inshallah. This conference is looking for enriching knowledge, skills, and experience by having a variety of international speakers and national and regional speakers. And it's intended to give a meaningful educational sessions to so many. Just a reminder, I mentioned that yesterday, that this conference is accredited by the European Accreditation Council for 17 European CME hours and a maximum of 25 credit hours by the WPA. In helping to make this conference a reality, we have to extend our appreciation to those who participated and make it possible. Lundbeck as the diamond sponsor, Janssen as the platinum sponsor, Asino as the gold sponsor, Hikma as the gold sponsor, Spimako as the bronze sponsor, and Exaltis as the bronze sponsor. Conference exhibitors, ProPharma Medical Supplies, Ream Hospital. The conference consists of 3 tracks. Track 1 will be held here. I will be chairing the session. Track 2 will be in the auditorium, in the lobby floor, chaired by Professor Thomas Schulz, the chairman and director of the Institute of Psychiatric Phenometric and Genomatics. And track 3 will be in the meeting quarter 1 to 3, 3rd floor, and the chairperson will be Dr. Aisha Dufairi, consultant psychiatrist at the Behavioral Science Pavilion, Sheikh Khalifa Medical City. And we are starting our first session. Before that, I will give the microphone to Dr. Midhat, chair of the conference. Please, Dr. Midhat.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mufid. I wanted to welcome you again on the second day of the conference. Thank God yesterday was full up to the last moment at 8:30 in the evening. It was interactive, and we have all the 3 halls full. Today we are honored by the presence of Professor Sol Levin, the CEO and Medical Director of the American Psychiatric Association. And we are honored by your presence, dear colleagues. I just wanted to introduce my dear brother and friend, Dr. Mufid Raouf. Dr. Mufid Raouf joined the United Arab Emirates in 2007. Dr. Mufid has lots of interest, and he is interested in music therapy and in psychology as well. He has PhD in psychology, and I'm always mentioning that he is the one who bought the milestones for the residency program in Sheikh Khalifa Medical City, and he has lots of the activities, and we are honored by his presence. He's a consultant psychiatrist, and he's going to chair the next session. So please welcome with me, Dr. Mufid.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Midhat, for the kind and nice presentation. You are humbling me. Okay, so without further delay, we will start with our first session, and we will have 2 speakers. It's my pleasure to introduce the first speaker, Professor Jigna Scott, who is a consultant psychiatrist, specializes in general adult psychiatry, old age psychiatry, as well as liaison psychiatry. She completed her training in the UK, and she has psychiatry as well, worked on inpatient wards and as a community psychiatrist. She has a keen interest in medical education, and she has been teaching mental health communication skills in Europe for over 10 years. And she's interested in research, particularly around improving mental health services for the wider public and promoting mental health. She currently holds the role of clinical assistant professor at Ajman University College of Medicine. Please welcome Dr. Jigna.
Thank you for that lovely welcome, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending the session today. So today I'm going to talk about a research project that I conducted in the UK. The research was based around junior doctors who are hoping to train in psychiatry and their experiences. So this was the paper. It was published in Medical Teacher. So if anybody's interested in reading the article, the reference is there. Okay. So a little bit of a background into training and psychiatry, training itself. In the UK, psychiatry still remains an unpopular choice for the training track. Some years ago, there was a research done, and medical students were asked to rank which specialty or the likelihood of which specialty they would choose, and psychiatry, only 14% of students would choose psychiatry at that time. So the Royal College of Psychiatrists in the UK have been working on ways of promoting mental health, promoting the psychiatry as a specialty, and they've been running a campaign. It's called Choose Psychiatry. It's been running for a number of years and it's gained popularity. They run a number of sessions with students, junior doctors, aimed at promoting mental health and the profession and the specialty. We know that numbers are improving. More junior doctors are signing up to psychiatry training. However, we're just about getting there, and the aim is to improve the numbers so that we can have the best candidates and therefore the best psychiatrists for the future. So this project is about what encourages junior doctors to choose psychiatry. Okay, so a little bit of a background on the UK training system, just for those who are not familiar with the UK training system. Once a student finishes medical school, they finish their MBBS, they enter the training program. So they first start with the first box, Foundation Year 1 and 2. I think a little bit of a delay here. I think you can see the first box, Foundation Year 1 and 2. During those 2 years, all junior doctors are entered into rotations. They complete 6 4-month rotations. Now, depending on which area they are in the UK, it's either given to them as a set of 6 placements or 3 and then 3, with not a great deal of wiggle room. There are, thank you. There are many psychiatry placements, and the number of placements in psychiatry have increased over the years. During that time, the junior doctors, they get experience in psychiatry. They get to work with the teams, the consultants, the nurses. They're placed in a number of different situations, whether it be inpatient, community, or specialty units such as eating disorders. So this study is looking at those foundation doctors. Once they've completed their foundation training, they enter a selection process where they choose which specialty they would like to specialize in. So that might be psychiatry, which is where I hope they would all want to be. It may well be internal medicine, GP, etc. They have to go through a application process and interview process. So at that point, if any junior doctor is interested in psychiatry, they must also show a commitment to the specialty itself. So the junior doctors are encouraged to take part in projects, research, clinical contact whilst in their foundation year. So the idea of this project is to find out whether their foundation year placements are adequate, what else can be improved, and also finding out a little bit about what it is that encourages students, junior doctors, to then choose psychiatry. So the aims of the project were quite broad. We've broken them down into these points here about the experience itself. We wanted to know the positives as well as the negatives of the experience that they were having. We wanted to know what they would like more of, also what they would like less of as well. And the idea and the aim of this project was to produce guidelines for the Royal College of Psychiatrists, which can then be shared countrywide. So again, a little bit more background of the project itself. We conducted 11 focus groups throughout England. As many of you might know, that the UK is split up into England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland. Each individual region has their own health education body, and so we worked with Health Education England, and therefore our project was aimed at the English foundation schools. So we asked the junior doctors to volunteer their attendance to the focus groups. We provided a lunch. We brought pizza, which always brings in the junior doctors. The inclusion criteria, it was quite broad. If they've done a psychiatry 4-month placement in the year prior to the focus group, or whether they were in a placement at the moment, or whether they had just completed one. And the exclusion criteria was around if they hadn't done a psychiatry placement at all, or if it had been over a year. And that was to help reduce recall bias. Okay, so we gained ethical approval from University College London. We had some funding from Health Education England to help us form the groups, move around the country. As we did focus groups which were recorded, those recordings were typed by an external agency, again to help reduce bias. We ensured the junior doctors, that no identifiable information was used, and most importantly, which was actually quite important to them, we assured them that any information they shared during the focus group didn't bear any kind of response in their placements themselves, their jobs, or their future careers. And this helped them share some of their negative experiences and be open and honest about their real thoughts and feelings. Okay, so we formed a semi-structured interview. It was based on previous research done in the area, and we used some the validated questionnaires that we used previously. We used a framework analysis to generate the themes. The themes are currently, and the guidelines are on the Royal College website, and I'll show you the link a little bit later. There were 3 members of our research team, and we triangulated the data as well. So as you can imagine, with 11 focus group, there was a lot of data. So a little bit about the results. I'm always not sure if it's a little bit blurry or not. So the demographics, the demographics and the age range, essentially we matched to the national statistics according to the GMC of all foundation doctors. We found that our group was representative of foundation doctors as a whole. So we were quite happy that all the doctors were represented in terms of gender and age. We had over 15 hours of transcripts of conversation, which was quite a lot of data, but then that improved the validity of the data. Okay, so from the data itself, we identified 12 themes. They're generally quite broad themes, and they had subsections in between them. The junior doctors had a lot to say. So as you can see the themes on the board. Some of them are related specifically to the UK training model itself, and some of them are more general. So I'm going to talk about the more general ones, which might be useful to you, your training with junior doctors and with medical students. So I'm just going to choose the ones that are more specific to us here today. Okay, so theme 1, the doctors talked about support. They were keen to gain experience in mental health. They were keen to speak to patients. They were keen to interact with staff. One of the main things was that they were keen to work and to get involved, but they also wanted the support. They wanted to be able to speak to their senior colleagues, for the senior colleagues to help explain to them what's going on and to improve their knowledge. So these are some of the comments that we've taken out from the transcripts, and some of them were positive, and some of them were kind of needing more work. So I've included both of them so you can see the kind of breadth of information that we did get. The main thing was access to your consultant, and to be able to know that what I'm doing is okay, and to help me learn more. Okay. Another one that's particularly interesting was kind of the positive exposures in theme 3. The junior doctors were really keen on getting stuck in, really keen on meeting lots of patients, really keen on making a difference. So this was a real positive. They weren't shy away from these situations. And they quite enjoyed the experience and exposure. So that's a positive, and I think in terms of organising placements, I think we can take that away and say, actually, these placements were useful for these junior doctors, and they've managed to learn quite a lot. Okay, and obviously we do want to know the things that we want to change. And I think the main problem is when the junior doctors were placed in very, very subspecialties locations. So, for example, only on an eating disorders unit or only on an old age dementia unit. They really wanted that spread of experience to help them decide whether they wanted to take on psychiatry as a profession, to help them make that decision. So that's something that we really did talk to the college about improving in the future, and that's something that the foundation schools have taken on board. And as usual, as the usual thing about junior doctors and their roles, I think they found a little bit of a confusion of the nursing staff in knowing what to ask them to do, or knowing where their specialty and knowledge lay. Okay. So the day-to-day experience in the UK, our junior doctors working in psychiatry also take care of physical health of the patients themselves, of course with the help of all their senior colleagues. So there's quite a lot of broad experience on a mental health ward. So some of their experiences were tied into that. We found that liaison placements were particularly interesting to the junior doctors. They were able to relate and link up physical health, mental health, and where the tie was, and where they could themselves make a difference, and where their role was. They found it quite useful to be almost the in-between of the physical health profession and mental health, and they were able to kind of join in the team, join in with nursing staff and be part of that team. So that particular placement, that particular specialty is quite popular amongst junior doctors and medical students, and it's gaining popularity in the UK itself, and I myself am also a liaison psychiatrist. Okay, so I've included kind of perceptions of psychiatry in general, which I thought might be useful to you, which might help you kind of encourage our students and our junior doctors to work more in psychiatry. And I was quite encouraged by a lot of what the junior doctors spoke about. They appreciated the fact that we spend more time with our patients. They appreciated the fact that we got to know our patients quite well, and actually that they trusted us. There's always the bigger problem of stigma, and they were able to spot the problems with stigma. They were able to see that this is still an ongoing problem, but they put themselves in that position to say, actually, if we're the future and we're the future workforce and future doctors, actually we're part of this solution. So they really did embed themselves into the experience and the kind of world of mental health. And that's something to really think about when we talk to our medical students, our junior doctors, and actually talk about the fact that, yes, there is stigma. what we are doing about it, and what we can help and encourage them to improve the situation for the future. So our junior doctors were quite keen on talking about that, which is really quite interesting. Okay, so overall, this study covered a wide geographical area. We were very specific with our inclusion and kind of exclusion criteria. I was quite pleased that quite a lot of junior doctors did volunteer to take part in this study, and that they actually were able to identify the rewarding aspects of working in mental health. We also discovered some extra observations. There were clear geographical differences. The northern cities in England had produced better experiences. For some reason, there was high anxiety around London and the London area. The junior doctors who had a relationship and a connection with their tutors, with their consultants, had a better experience in psychiatry. They felt more able to ask questions and be involved. And as an up-to-date figure, for 2020-21, the fill rate for core training is now 99%. And this is going back, if we go back to maybe 7 years, it was only around 70%. So this is a huge increase and a huge difference. And I think that's mainly in part of the Choose Psychiatry campaign, but also some of the things that we found in this study as well. So this study is published on the Royal College of Psychiatrists website. So we've created a set of guidelines for junior doctor training in terms of specific experiences, what's useful to do and what is less useful for the students themselves, the junior doctors themselves, and the link is there on here. So thank you very much, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jigna, for an interesting presentation and for sticking to the time. Very kind of you. Thank you. It's my pleasure to call for the second speaker, Ms. Khadija Yasser Abdul Raouf Abdul Mun'im. She is a fifth-year medical student, and she is a young researcher who aspires to be a future good doctor in the field of internal medicine. Right. And progress further in her research field.
Okay.
Please welcome Ms. Khadija.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good morning. I am Khadija Yasser, a fifth-year medical student in Ajman University. And today I'll be presenting our research in attitudes towards mental health in the UAE. Can you go next? All right. So before starting, I would like to first go through some background knowledge. Okay, so stigma, a word that sounds soft to the ears, but has a very huge impact in the world of psychiatry. Did you know that stigma isn't actually an English word? Unlike many medical terms, stigma has a Greek origin. It means to carve, to mark as a sign of shame, punishment, and disgrace. And according to the American Psychiatric Association, stigma comes from the lack of understanding or fear, both of which can come from the mispresentation of mental illness by the media. The public may accept medical or genetic nature of a mental health disorder and the need of the treatment, but people may still view it as negative. This was said by The Lancet, published on 2016. So we had to find more information, more statistics about mental illnesses and about stigma. So we looked for the worldwide statistics, and according to the World Health Organization, 1 in every 8 people in the world live with mental disorder, or about 970 million people in the world, most of which they do not have access to effective care. And if we look at the suicide rates around the world, we'd find that they would be increasing. And the highest, which we found, was around 40 per 100,000, which raises the question, is stigma the reason with which why people don't seek help? Is it the reason with which increasing in mental illness disorders is happening? Is it the reason with which suicide is increasing? Therefore, we had to study stigma even further. Now, we also looked for statistics locally, and unfortunately, we did not find any statistics at all about anxiety and depression. Therefore, we had to look through that when we studied it. But we found other studies about anxiety and depression in relation to other disorders or diseases like COVID-19. So, raising the question again, is stigma still a problem in the UAE? According to Cleveland Clinic Abu Dhabi, even though there has been an improvement and a greater acceptance and understanding of mental illnesses in the recent years, there is still stigma or a sense of shame attached to having a mental illness. The stigma comes from the general public's lack of understanding about this mental illness. So, stigma, does it only affect the people who have mental illnesses, or who does it affect? Is it their family members? Is it the people around them? So according to the American Psychiatric Association, stigma does not only affect individuals with mental illnesses, but also the loved ones who support them, often including their family members. This sparked the idea of our research. We had to understand more the connection between family and stigma. We had to connect them, so we came up with our research title, Attitudes Towards Mental Health Problems in a Sample of United Arab Emirates Residents. And me and my colleagues, Ahmed Bani Bella, Hajar Jamal Tir, Noor Al-Qadiri, our professor, Gabriel Andrade, and Dr. Dalia Bidawi, we published this research on the 18th of November 2022 in the Middle East Current Psychiatry Journal. We first started by getting ethical approval, and the research protocol were approved by Ajman University's Institutional Review Board in order to comply with the ethical requirements. None of the authors have anything to disclose. Now, starting off with the methods, we had 3 important sections. First, with the demographics, we separated into age, gender, nationality, and residency. Then coming to the attitudes towards mental health scale, which is the main chunk of the research. It is around 35 items containing 3 key sections. The first section reflects the attitudes towards community views. For example, my community views mental health problems as something to be kept secret. Second comes the internal shame factors, like I would blame myself for my problems. Third comes the reflected shame factors, like I would worry that I would be letting my family's honor down. These items were arranged in a Likert scale from 1 being completely disagree to 5 being completely agree. The higher the score someone got, the more negative attitudes towards mental health they had. The last scale we used was the family value scale, which contains 14 items. And there's more to the family value scale than just what it contains. It was actually initially designed to measure the influence of modernization and urbanization on the family values, as well as attitudes and behaviors of urban and rural Greeks. The expectation being that more urbanized individuals would hold more individualistic family values, whereas rural individuals would maintain more collectivistic and traditional family values. So there were statements like mother's place is at home, or problems should be resolved within the family, or the father is the breadwinner. And again, these statements were arranged in a Likert scale, 1 being completely disagree, 5 being completely agree, and the higher score indicates a greater adherence to family values. We got 201 responses, and it was arranged in the following demographics. Ethnicity separated into both Arabs and non-Arabs, Arabs representing around 71% and non-Arabs 29%. The place of residency in the UAE, which was around 59% in the Northern Emirates. The gender female represented the highest in our research. Around 63% were female. The mean age in our results were 24.6 years, around 25 years. All right, so as you can see, this is the graph for attitudes towards mental health. All right, so the lowest score represented over here, it is 35, meaning they have the most positive attitudes towards mental health. The highest score was 175 out of 175, meaning they had the most negative attitudes towards mental health. The graph is slightly negatively skewed, which is preferred in this case because it shows that more people chose more positive attitudes towards mental health. Therefore, it shows that there's some sort of improvement in the way we think about mental health right now, even though it's slight and it's not that obvious, but there is improvement. All right. Then there is the family value scale. The lowest value was 140 out of 70, which shows least adherence to family values, and the highest value was 70 out of 70, which shows the most adherence to family values. Now over here, this graph shows that it's completely, like, you can see that it's skewed very clearly, meaning that more individuals have higher adherence to the family values. And because of its skewedness, we had to use a non-parametric test to compare the genders with the adherence to family values shown on this slide. So we wanted to find if there was some sort of connection between genders and family values using a non-parametric test. We found that gender has a statistically significant association with family value scale, showing that over here you can see the males' side is really high, higher score than females. Therefore, males show higher adherence to family values than females. Now, the most important result was to compare attitudes towards mental health with family values, which we wanted to reach at the end. Showing on the y-axis is the family values, and on the x-axis is the attitudes towards mental health. We wanted to see the correlation, and we found that there is correlation between attitudes towards mental health and family values. But correlation is not strong. As you can see, the points are not really towards the center, but it is present. It is important as well to mention that there was no any other variable that correlated with attitudes towards mental health than family values. At the end, in conclusion, is stigma still a problem in the UAE? Yes, unfortunately, stigma towards mental health remains a problem in the UAE. Therefore, more efforts should be put in order to remove this stigma to allow more people to seek help. So we found that there is a correlation between attitudes towards mental health and adherence towards family values. We also found that males have a higher adherence to family values than females, which may mean that males have more negative attitudes towards mental health. There isn't a direct correlation, but it may indicate that. Gender did not correlate directly with negative attitudes towards mental health, but there was an indirect connection. Finally, nationality and emirate of residency did not have any connection at all with roles towards attitudes towards mental health. The limitations we had was that we measured a really narrow age range. We had a really narrow age range. It was mostly like university students at coffee shops, at like malls, when we distributed the QR codes. So later on, maybe in future researchers have to go to places like workplaces, wider range of areas in order to collect a bigger range of ages. We had the limited sample of areas, as I mentioned before, and some questions were not quite clear to the people, like mothers' places at home. Many people were having a difficulty in understanding that. Maybe in the future, people should just clarify this statement more. Finally, I think it's clear now that more research should be done about stigma in the UAE. It's very not explained as much as we want it to be, because it's a very important topic. My own suggestion is that I think people should talk more about their mental health experiences. I think it makes people more understanding, or think that it's okay to have someone, if there is someone else that feels the same way. And according to the American Psychiatric Association, about 3 in 4 young teens seeking information online about depression said they were looking for personal anecdotes from people who had suffered in the past. Meaning, if families would talk to their kids about their mental health experience, if friends, like in uni when we have exams, we're really stressed, if we talk to each other, if we talk to our doctors, it's gonna become better and stigma is gonna go away, or at least become better. Also, organize more campaigns or conferences like the one we are doing right now. This shows some sort of improvement in the way we think about mental health. Lastly, advertise mental health-related issues even more, while normalizing it through social media websites and many other ways and campaigns. Thank you very much. These are my references. Yes, thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Khadija. Please be seated there. There. And I would call Dr. Jigna also to the stage. Thank you. That was very interesting and inspiring. Stigma issue that we all are aware of, and we do suffer with ourselves, with our patients, clients, society. And just for your information, it's not only in our region, it's all over the world, wherever you go. Mental health problems, that's how I like to call them, mental health problems, rather than mental illness. And I'm praying, you know, I have been an old advocate for rephrasing our terms. I don't know whom to address. The APA, the Royal College, somebody need to change this term, mental illness. It has to be rephrased. It needs to be rephrased if you want to build up a future of more healthy people and more transparent communication. And we call it psychological disorders, psychological conditions, wherever that's more benign. Thank you to the speakers, and the floor is open now for any questions or comments. Will be a pleasure, please. Microphones, Shabab. Yes.
Yes, I want to thank the two speakers for doing a great presentation, both of them. Maybe we should give them another hand. So I'm going to have one quick question for the first speaker, and that was, what made you think that, or not what you think, how did you feel when you began to look at the results that the students that went into psychiatry and a rotation, that they all came out having a very positive view? And what was it about that that they really came out positive? And then for the second speaker, thank you for bringing it to attention. The American Psychiatric Association is about to start a multi-million-dollar campaign in the United States to move away from the word stigma. The only diseases I knew many years ago that would say stigma would be HIV/AIDS and women with breast cancers. Today, they are now normalized as to any other illness, and we're now about to start doing a massive public affairs campaign, and we ask you to join us on it. So I really want to thank the second speaker as well, because I think if you reframe that health is just with mental health, and mental health is with health, and that is just another disease like diabetes, hypertension, and yes, we may not have the great knowledge yet, but it is coming very clearly from the field of research, including out of the UAE. So I'd love you to say, what's your next study going to be in order to reframe the issue away from the word stigma, seeing it as a positive disease?
Okay.
Is that on? Thank you. The question around the research and the encouragement with the positive responses,
I've worked in mental health and psychiatry for 15 years. I've been teaching students for over 10 years. And so I do work closely with the junior doctors, with students. And there has been a change over the years. And in terms of stigma, I'm happy to say that that's improving as well in the attitudes in general. It was encouraging to hear positive remarks around working in mental health, specifically that kind of recognition that us as psychiatrists, us as mental health workers, the fact that we do spend more time with our patients, and that recognition of actually it does make a difference to our patients, and it makes a world of a difference that we spend more time than the 10 minutes a general practitioner might only have, and the fact that we do have that extra time, which we do need. I think that was hugely encouraging for that to be recognized, because I think in the past, when I first started working in mental health, that wasn't quite as recognized, and it was seen as, oh, psychiatrists spend too much time, they waste too much time, what do they do anyway? So I was happy to see that change. The research did show a lot of negative aspects as well, I think, from those doctors who may be not wanting to work in mental health and still had some stigma themselves around the subject. It wasn't quite as fast-paced for some doctors, and that was seen as being negative for them. But I was very encouraged to see the fact that it was further skewed in a positive direction. We have actually done a secondary analysis on this research, and where we've conducted a discourse analysis to actually look at the language used. And what we have found is there's a positive correlation with positive language, and the negative language is very dispersed and not really any relationship. So actually the discourse analysis is really helpful as well. That's yet to be published.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question. So I think the next step was to find out actually how many people suffer from anxiety and depression. And after we do that, maybe we should find out, do they actually seek help or not? So I think we should collect data about people in universities, people in workplaces. Do they have anxiety or depression? And then we should as well collect responses about, do they actually seek help? Do they talk? What makes them feel better about themselves and about their anxiety or depression? So these studies should be done in order to know, where do we lie in our society right now? How many people suffer from these diseases? And how can we make it better? How can we remove the stigma from our public society?
Thank you. Allow me to thank Dr. Shaul Levin. Actually, we are honored and privileged to have him with us. This nice gentleman I just met in the morning, he introduced himself to me. He said, I'm Shaul Levin. And it resonates in my mind. I always receive emails from this name. And after we departed, I remembered that he used to be the president of the American Psychiatric Association. Currently, he is the CEO and the medical director of the American Psychiatric Association. I mean, being a fellow, we receive regular emails. Please, an applause to Dr. Okay. Any other questions? No questions? No comments? Okay, so we will agree that every one of us is going to be a counselor, an educator to people around us, starting with ourselves, with our families, neighbors, friends, trying to destigmatize mental health problems so people can look at it in a more positive way. And we just need to normalize it. That's all we need. It's just like any other problems. It's not a sign. I usually keep telling my clients when they say, Doctor, I swear to God, this is not me. I used to be a strong person. Or I'm doing my prayers regularly. And I tell them in details, it's not a sign of weakness in your personality. It has nothing to do with your being a good believer or not. It's a disorder that happens just like diabetes, hypertension, and it happens to everybody. No one is immune from it. So just accept it, get to terms with your condition so you can get over it, hopefully. No more questions, no more comments. I will close the session. Excuse me. Thank you. So we, for the first time in a local conference, we are ahead of time. Usually we are lagging behind. So we were supposed to have a coffee break at 11. So if you agree, we will take it now, and we'll be back by 11, maximum 11, 11:05 to start the second session. Thank you so much. See you in 20 minutes. Thank you.